It's how human the faces look. Okay, video over. Goodbye. Hello everyone, this is Callimara here, and no, it's not calamari. Welcome back to my channel, or if you want to join the pond, go ahead and take a dive. You might like it here. So, the title is pretty self-explanatory. Gen 5 has its issues even as a standalone series separate from Gen 4, which it isn't anyway, and it's impossible to separate now because it specifically defines itself and integrates plot points in the story as a continuation of Gen 4. And I personally think they shot themselves in the foot by doing that, because by tying themselves to Gen 4 for brand recognizability and likely audience crossover, they have also opened themselves up to constant comparison and scrutiny, and limiting themselves creatively based on already established lore. Now, this isn't a takeaway from anyone's enjoyment of the reboot. If you like it, great! Good news, you have several canon movies and series to enjoy. Congrats! This video isn't going to change the validity or the canonness of those media. Hasbro isn't going to be like, well, Callimara the art YouTuber said she didn't like this concept, so we should scrap the whole thing. Don't worry. I mean, it'd be cool if I did have that much influence over Hasbro, but, you know, I don't. I mean, I may have some sway over at Zag Studios because they kept using my plot points, but you know, it's whatever. Either that, or I'm really good at predicting story beats before they were even hinted. But in regards to Generation 5 of MLP, I'm mostly focusing on the design and visual aspects of the reboot, because story-wise, I haven't really seen anything of G5 outside of the movie and the first episode of Make Your Mark. It's still pretty early in the story, with a lot of lore and mysteries being hinted at, so we don't know enough to draw any real conclusions on whether something is a plot hole yet. But hey, if you love mysteries and piecing bits and pieces of lore together to form a greater narrative, you'll probably love this book I've been reading called Symphony of the Sojourn, which is also the sponsor of this video. Symphony of the Sojourn is a PG-13 fantasy adventure that follows the stories of different characters, each telling their own story about a larger narrative. Inspired by the author's many D&D campaigns as a forever DM, Symphony of the Sojourn is set in the Sojourn Sea, an archipelago that every nation of the old world hopes to control. Here, a ramshackle alliance of rogues and wizards, soldiers, and revolutionaries manage to change the destiny of their world. One problem though, no one but them knows what actually happened. And so, they have assembled to weave their individual narratives together in an effort to recount the heroic journey they experienced. Each story is a piece in the grand puzzle that tipped the balance of power around the world. No two tales are alike, but they are filled with swashbuckling, magic, hope, loss, and revelation. So if you enjoy D&D or stories with a mystery that require you to put together your own theories, or if you want to support a transgender author, I highly recommend you check this book out. You can purchase it from the link in my description. And speaking of tales, let's talk about the Tell Your Tale shorts, because I'm aware there's probably some more lore drops and context in it, but I just refuse to touch it because it is visually objectionable to me, and frankly I don't think it's meant to be appealing to anyone above the age of 10, which is fine. I'm not about to slam a kids show for appealing to kids. Do kids even find this appealing? But I personally think the 2D designs for the Gen 5 ponies are giving unstable fables. I just hate muzzle designs that separate the nose from the mouth as a stylistic choice, and the faces of the characters are just too short and flat to be identifiable as horses. It's not really as bad on the mares. Izzy pushes it a little bit though, but it's especially atrocious on Hitch, and even in the movie where it's in 3D. Sunny's dad's design was pretty bad. Like, you can't tell me that's not just a man with a horse body. And it's the same with Hitch. He just looks like they pasted a human face on a horse body. Well, they all kinda do. And I don't know, maybe they look better in motion, but some of the stills I've seen have really been kind of concerning. Like, you can't tell me that this isn't just a human girl with hooves. Don't think about horse girl, don't think about horse girl. Gen 5 designs look like they took the heads of the human Equestria girls and put them on their pony bodies. Like a cursed centaur design. Or the horse version of a manticore. which I guess is just my horse prince. To prove my point, here are the heads of the G5 ponies with human bodies. Hasbro really looked at My Little Pony, which already has a distinct style and aesthetic, and went, okay, now scrap that and make it CalArts. And this just extends not only to their 2D designs, but this is also an issue for their 3D designs, albeit not as egregious. My first impression upon the reveal of the character designs for G5 was literally, why are their faces so human? Like, I was genuinely disappointed how unhorse-like their faces were. They really smashed in their muzzles so far that they're barely there, and I can't help but think these iterations of the ponies are a result of inhumane selective breeding practices, kind of like the pug, or, to keep to the theme of horses, Arabian horses. Hence, Elsa Face. Ever since the astronomical success of Frozen, it feels like every future animation venture, owned by Disney or not, strives to be like Frozen, and one of the ways they attempt to do that is by creating characters that fit the mold of Elsa and Anna, even though I personally feel they've perfected the 3D princess design with Rapunzel. I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but she just looks so much better than Anna and Elsa. I personally think it's because they let Rapunzel have a longer face, which really helped balance the size of her eyes. Elsa and Anna's faces, in proportion to their eyes, were way too short and small. It's kind of like the celestial twilight problem I discussed in my Twilight redesign video. Go check that out if you want to hear more about it. But some of the hallmarks of the Elsa face are the tiny little noses, round faces, and owlishly large eyes. It basically looks like someone took the liquefy tool on someone's face and did this. A prime example of this is, of course, Aquafina Dragon, with her own squished-in muzzle, which ironically would have made a great base for the ponies of My Little Pony in 3D. Mostly because she still had a muzzle that didn't completely separate her nose from her mouth. I think maybe Hasbro has lost the plot a little and forgotten that the main demographic of My Little Pony are not just little girls, but specifically horse girls. As in, they like horses and probably wanted their own ponies growing up like I did. So it would actually help a lot to have your horse characters look like horses and do horse things, because maybe that's what your audience are tuning in for. But maybe that's just me, I don't know. Luckily, this tiny muzzle design doesn't really carry over to the toys, but they did overhaul the face molds pretty significantly by giving the ponies more forward-facing eyes and prominent cheeks. Even though front-facing eyes in animals are a feature of predators because it helps them target and focus on their prey, while prey animals, like horses, have eyes on the sides of their heads because it gives them a wider field of vision to watch out for predators. So I guess unlike their Gen 4 vegetarian ancestors, the ponies in Gen 5 hunt and eat meat. No big deal. I mean, I guess horses will occasionally eat small animals, so maybe it's not that far off. It's a source of protein, you know? But I don't think that was the intention Hasbro had. So it's kind of comical and slightly off-putting to me personally. My main issue with the new line of toys, though, is how skinny their necks and bodies are compared to their round bobbleheads, because it makes the toy look really disjointed. I assume this is because the heads are meant to be articulated, but My Little Pony dolls have never articulated their dolls' heads this way. This head mold is also drastically different from any mold the My Little Pony toy line has ever done before, so to me, it kind of breaks the brand identity. Like, if you didn't tell me that these ponies were the newest generation of the MLP toy line, I would never know that they were. I'd probably think they were My Little Pony knockoffs. The signature of My Little Pony dolls up until this generation was that they had their articulation on their necks, so the upper half of the neck and head were one part, which then connected to the lower half of their necks and bodies, which was another part. That's why most older MLP dolls had this line around their necks, because that was where they were articulated. That helped blend their heads with their bodies better and allowed them to create a more horse-like silhouette, rather than just girl doll but on 4 legs and hooves. Heck, Bratz ponies captured the MLP aesthetic better than Hasbro themselves. But even if they wanted to go for the huge bobblehead and small body chibi aesthetic, I feel that they gave up halfway and didn't fully commit either. Like, I would have been much more accepting of the new art direction if they went by the way of My Littlest Pet Shop horses, with the teeny tiny bodies and neck and huge head, because at least they committed to it. But even compared to their actual show designs, the toys failed to properly capture the character's likeness, which is honestly par for the course with Hasbro, so I don't know. At least they're consistent with that. I'm just saying, if they moved the eyes to the size of the heads again, articulated the toys by the neck, made the necks thicker, and blended it with the heads, it might have been recognizable as an MLP doll. Though this Misty Bright Dawn doll is pretty excellent, I must admit. I think her mane really helped a lot in this case, so there you go. If you want your scrawny toothpick dolls to look more balanced, just give them bigger hair. Give the little girls something to brush and braid as MLP dolls were intended. But, you know, I'm not just a complainer. Most of the time, I also try to give my own suggestions on how I'd fix the things I have a problem with, and I happen to have the artistic capability to bring my vision to life, so here's how I would have wanted G5 to look. And if you hate it, that's fine. You can design your own, you can do whatever you want. For this reimagining though, I will be using Sunny Starscout for my model. First things first, I would give them longer faces with more prominent muzzles and move their eyes to the size of their heads. I'm drawing heavy inspiration from the G2 pony designs because in my opinion, they resembled the G5 designs the most compared to any other generation, even down to the prominent cheeks and slender legs and necks. And because G2 was the only MLP generation without an animated series, so the art style has never appeared on screens before. And it was partly because I saw someone on Twitter draw the G4 main 6 and G2's art style, and I was absolutely obsessed, okay? I wanted to draw in that art style too. Of course, as much as I personally love this art direction, I know that it's probably out of style and doesn't go with today's design sensibilities, so I'll be updating it to be acceptable for modern release as well. I think nowadays kids' media tend to prefer simple and sleek designs. There isn't as much emphasis on swirls and frills as there used to be, and designs often lean more stylistic than before, particularly with more exaggerated head-to-body ratios, and I personally think that's a result of the rising popularity of Japanese media, particularly anime, and Western media trying to replicate that kawaii aesthetic. Aside from that, a current staple of modern kids' media is big, sparkly eyes, which again, I believe is highly inspired by Japanese anime and their kawaii aesthetic. I personally love big, sparkly eyes, so I'm very excited that it's becoming more widely accepted and mainstream in Western media sensibilities. But then, I've always been a big fan of hyper-feminine designs and visuals. I'm not gonna deny that. If it's pink, sparkly, and girly, I'm all over it. But another important distinguishing factor between modern designs and their older designs is in the line art. Nowadays, 2D animated kids shows opt for thicker, bolder line art. The designs look clean and tidy, whereas older 2D animated media preferred thin, delicate lines and overall looked more painterly and hand-drawn. I also think that the shape language for kids' media nowadays tends to lean more sharp, sleek, and pointy, whereas older kids' media designs were softer and rounder. I mean, just look at how Strawberry Shortcake evolved over the years, from the baby doll aesthetic to a more sporty, active look. And I get it, companies like Hasbro prefer to appeal to the masses and what's popular than appealing to a specific target audience, because if you're too out there, you'll potentially alienate a demographic of paying customers that could have been buying their product, and that's money lost because at the end of the day, it's all about capitalism, baby. It's a cruel world we live in. But to give props where it's due, I do think it was good of G5 to give their main protagonists different body proportions and making them look more like individuals than generic copy-pastes of each other with different hair and eyes. A problem with most older gen MLP designs is that they just use the exact same mold and only changed the ponies' colors and personality, which meant a lot of them just had same face and same body, heck even same hair syndrome, up until Gen 4, where they started being more varied with their hair, eyes, and bodies. Also, for some reason, while I was drawing Sunny, I thought that she had her hair in a French braid that went all the way up her nape, and I was about to be like, oh my god, she literally has Elsa hair! But I was wrong. It's actually more of a Jasmine hairstyle, and I think the reason I thought this was because I was too fresh off of my Applejack redesign. Hey, go check that out, by the way. I didn't manage to catch it while I was recording the speed draw, but I do correct it in the end product. And I have a little bonus for the end as well, so be sure to stick around to the end. But for fun, I also styled her tail the same way. So while I did mostly follow the proportions of the G2 ponies for Sunny, I made the head bigger to match the proportions of the G3 and G4 ponies, and honestly, I probably could have made it even bigger. And I also used the simplified leg shape from those generations as well. Though I did keep the visible hooves because it's a nice touch of detail that helps distinguish it from Gen 3 and 4. For the eyes, I opted for the big sparkly eyes that are on trend, but with a sleeker, more simplified style that would be easy to animate while looking punchy and distinct. Personally, I would have liked it to look more hand-painted, but that's not really the trend these days, and the purpose of this redesign is to follow current trends of what's popular. Still, I think I managed to find a good compromise here. My main goal with this is to create a design that the fandom would want to draw OCs for, because I'm of the personal belief that the success of a series really depends on the engagement of the audience to the series, not just watch time. I mean, look at how much Tumblr has done for shows like Supernatural and Doctor Who and Sherlock. So many fanfictions. Because creating OCs and original stories from your series really helps push it to the public consciousness, increases its visibility, and is a benchmark for whether or not your show will be remembered once it's over. People might not even have to watch your show to know the characters and buy merch for it and engage with it. So yeah, while there's definitely a benefit to making really distinct body shapes and styles for your characters, you also have to be mindful that it should be easily replicatable by little children learning to draw that want to make their own OCs for the show. For the line art, I wanted to try a new lining technique using Clip Studio Paint's line tools here because I thought it would help achieve that clean, consistent line weight that really defines 2D animation in modern day, but I did struggle with the technical adjustments of it a lot because I'm not used to it. And I'm pretty sure the Bezier curve tool is supposed to be capable of ending in sharp points, but I wasn't sure how to achieve that. I'm sure if I practiced and studied it more, I'll probably be able to figure it out, but for now, I'm just going with what I can and what I know. Using a vector layer to readjust the lines after I've put them down, I use thicker lines for the outline and silhouette, and thinner lines for details inside the silhouette. One thing about vector layers in CSP is that you can't color in the line with an alpha lock unless you rasterize it. So make sure that you're completely happy with your lines before you start coloring it in and turning it into a raster layer. If you've never drawn before, this probably sounds like complete mumbo jumbo to you. So I don't know, if you want a video on how I do my line art, let me know in the comments below. There are some blunt line ends that I left in the line art because I wasn't sure how to end these lines in a point, so I figure I would just erase it to a point once I rasterize the entire layer. But if any one of you watching has any tips on using the Bezier curve, let me know in the comments below. Also, because I enjoy incorporating fun facts into my videos, here are some about Sunny. So, Sunny Starscout was created and designed by Leah Dabsey, who is a French freelance artist that worked as a character designer and 2D character designer for Gen 5. And fun fact about Leah, they actually started off as a fan artist in the Gen 4 MLP fandom, and they've been making fan art since 2011. See? Who says you can't use fan art in your art portfolios? Anyway, I just thought that was a very cool fact about them, and very aspirational. But getting back to Sunny, she was initially referred to as the Explorer in the concept phase before being named June, and was said to have been heavily inspired by young Ellie Fredrickson from Up. She was initially meant to have an interest in mechanical things and was likely intended to be an inventor or engineer of some sort, which would have been really cool, and you can really see that in the initial design that Leah did for her. I especially love the goggles and freckles they gave her, and I wish they'd kept that in her final design. The name Sunny Starscout was then officially trademarked on February 25th, 2021. And honestly, looking at the smashed snout in Leah's art style, I really don't mind it. You can tell it's a part of their art style and it actually works. For a while, I was trying to figure out why it doesn't feel as uncanny as the final 3D model, and I think it might have been because of the head-to-body ratio. Leah's initial concept drawings had a much larger head compared to the body. Their drawing of the head is much wider and rounder, whereas the 3D model had a much smaller, narrower head, which I think made it look too similar to a human face. I genuinely wish they went with Leah's style for Tell Your Tale as well, and to be completely fair, some of the concept art that was made for it by Claudio Nakari was genuinely very good. It was very round and cute, and it looked so lively and dynamic. I could see a lot of kids really liking that. I'm just curious why they decided to go with this rendition as opposed to this one. After looking at these concepts side by side, I figured out the reason why I felt the G5 ponies' faces looked so human was because they placed their snouts exactly where a human nose would be, as opposed to where a horse's nose would be. And the same goes for their mouths, which is actually higher up on the face than it really needs to be. This creates space between the bottom of the face and the mouth, which creates a chin. Horses do not have chins. They have chin grooves because their lips connect directly to the bottom of their jaws. But this positioning of mouth and snouts necessitates a chin. So they gave them chins. And so you end up with Star versus the Forces of Evil, Pony Edition. I think part of the reason I liked the older designs better than the final Tell Your Tale designs is because the nose and mouth were positioned lower on the characters' faces, or at the very least, they made the faces shorter to minimize that uncanny chin space. Moral of the story is that if you need to squish horse muzzle so drastically that you end up with a chin, you've gone too far into the uncanny valley. And before someone calls me biased and just a hater towards Gen 5, I also have a major problem whenever they drew any of the horses in Gen 4 with this face angle, because similarly, it also gives me the heebie-jeebies. Once I start coloring Sunny in, I also realized that Sunny's Tell Your Tale design omits the white marks at the bottom of her legs. And that was a shame because I'm all for the new Gen designs incorporating more horse coat patterns. That's what I've been doing in my redesign series and something I will continue doing for my other redesigns of My Little Pony. And because I just have way too much knowledge of horse coat patterns now after playing the Ranch of Rivershine for about 100 hours straight. So I need to use it for something, okay? I have to get some sort of return on this. And that's a very roundabout way of saying that for this redraw, I'm definitely adding her markings back in. Otherwise, I didn't really tinker with Sunny's colors. I really like them. I think they encapsulate her name and theme perfectly and have really good harmony and contrast. Of course, I also color matched all the outlines to the colors, save for the eyes, because I think the big dark eyelashes and outline really helps it to pop, which really fall in line with current kids' media trends, especially ones targeted specifically to girls. Now, to be honest, I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to keep the pink eyebrows that Sunny has because I thought that they blended a bit too much with her orange face. But then when I colored it in, I actually quite liked how it looked. It kind of gave me a throwback of like retro color sensibilities, so I decided to keep it as well. And with all that said and done, here is the final look. And as a bonus, I also drew Sunny's alicorn form, but not really because they're not fully there yet, because I guess she still has some ways to go before she becomes a full alicorn. I'm not really clear on the lore or the theories that are floating around regarding that, but because this isn't a permanent transformation, I decided to make them a bit translucent to imply that they're not fully there yet. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you so much for hanging out in my channel for a while. I hope your skin didn't get too pruny. Big shout out to my lovely pond dwellers on Patreon. If you want to become a pond dweller and get early access to my content, join my Patreon. If you want to see more from me, then please follow me on all my social media. If you want to submit fan art or chat with me, join my Discord server. And if you want more of my stories, check out my Wild Word series here on YouTube because that will make me really happy. All the links are in my description and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye!